Modern logos can seem really tricky to create. They're so elegant and beautiful, yet when we go to make them, we run out of ideas and they become really difficult to create. Well, today, with the help of our sponsor, Logitech, with these two nifty devices and my whole set of devices that I use, I'm going to be showing you really cool techniques and methods inside of your apps, specifically Adobe Illustrator today, on creating modern logos. Let's do it. First thing, you're probably wondering what these two things are. This is called the Logitech MX Creative Console, and it's made up of two things. This is basically a keypad. This keypad allows you to have shortcuts built in, and it's pretty crazy. Let me explain. If I want to use the pen tool, instead of learning all the key shortcuts in Illustrator, I can just press pen tool and it will give me the pen tool. And we can actually edit all of these. But that isn't all that you get. If you press this button over here, it will cycle through. So now we have align objects, we have the pathfinder, divide, things like that. We even have an export button there, which is pretty nice to have. Now this changes depending on what program you're using, and it works flawlessly in the Adobe Creative Cloud Suite, which is brilliant. Over here we have the creative dial, which is pretty cool. What this allows you to do, and again you can fully customize it, is you can zoom in, pan out in your work, select different layers, and you have this button here which gives you some action hotbars there. So I'm going to be using my new tool set, which I'm very happy for. It's an amazing thing that helps me for this video. Now, one method I love to use for creating modern minimalistic style logos is directly in a grid. I call this the direct grid. If we go into Adobe Illustrator here, we go to the top left, we have this thing called the rectangular grid tool down here, which you have to hold it on this line tool. Come down here and we have this grid tool there. If I hold shift down, it will basically create a grid like this. We can increase the grid by pressing up on the arrow key or right to increase the rows and the columns. I'm going to go back to where it was. If we hold shift, it will create this equilateral or this equal perfect square of grids like so. And that is just one shape. Now the cool thing about this is that we can actually go ahead and let's select our shape here, and we can go and make them into guides by pressing Command 5. These guides you cannot edit. This is just what we need as a reference for the background. And no matter what professional logo you're seeing, the chances are that they've been created in a grid. And that's because of the way that they scale super well and the consistency they provide. So I'm going to make a logo today that is of an A, and we're going to experiment with it, and I'm going to show you how. So now that we've got our grid, what we can do is, if you just zoom in a little bit here, is I'm going to bring out a rectangle like so, and I'm going to draw on the grid. Now you see how my rectangle snaps to this grid line. That's because I have something called Smart Guides turned on. You can turn these on by going up to View and then going down to Snap to Grid, or pressing Smart Guides, or just pressing the Command U. So the MX Creative Console comes with app-specific profiles for Adobe apps, so you can start editing right out of the box. Here's Logitech Options Plus. This is where you can customize all of your peripherals. I've got my mice, I've got my Creative Consoles over here. All the elements of the Creative Console are customizable. So if I click on the Creative keypad here, I can customize this. This is my default view, but up here, I've got all the different profiles that I could have. So for instance, my Photoshop profile. With this, you can actually click and change the icon. You can actually add different pages to this as well. So on this page 3, I can literally just bring in a new file button and it'll add it there, or I could swap it around and that will instantly go to the Creative keypad. I don't have to do anything else. Same as for Adobe Illustrator. If I have a specific function that I want to do, I've added here a new view, registered trademark symbol, and snap to grid. But as you can see on the right hand side, there are so many options. This adapts to the app that you're using, so you don't need to come and switch it here in Logitech Options. It will just automatically switch for you. If we look at the MX dial pad, we can change all of these buttons too, and they are also app specific. So for instance, After Effects, I can add an action if I want to. Notice up here from the marketplace, we can actually update our profiles and it will enhance some functionality. So here we have blur level, but if I don't want this to be blur level, I can go to one of these here on the right hand side. I can go to mask and we can just select mask expansion and add it anywhere. We also have something called the actions ring, because this button here gives us an actions ring, which will appear whenever we're in the app and we hold that button. Easily just bring add expression into this part of the delay if I do not need it. I could change the aspect ratio by simply just dragging it in here. The idea being that we can add any sort of setting that we need to quickly access on either the dial pad or the keypad. With the Creative Console, you can control your OS, open folders, websites. You can launch apps and control media with a key press. If I go back to my keypad here, I can actually create separate profiles for depending on what I'm doing. In my Illustrator, I can actually just create a new profile called Illustrator, and we can just change whatever we want. I can add a new page. Let's go to view. Let's do preview outlines, and I can move that anywhere, and it'll automatically adapt on the actual keypad itself. If we go to all actions and we go to find more from marketplace, you'll notice that there is a marketplace filled with different profiles. So we could bring in Lightroom and that will install. But what about an app that isn't featured on the marketplace? Well, great thing is we can actually add a profile. We could add a general profile, which will be independent from a specific app, or we could go to an application profile and we can choose from any of our applications that are on here. For instance, Clean Shot. Let's start with a blank profile. What I want to do is I'm going to go up to all actions and I'm going to press keypad. And from here I can go to keyboard and I could do a keyboard shortcut. I could say I want to take a screenshot and I can give it the command Control Shift 4 and I can save that. And now whenever I want to take a screenshot, I can do that really easily. And this is exactly the same for the creative dial pad where we could change anything in here, and also the actions ring. Okay, so what we want to do is create shapes in this grid. The cool thing is if I create just a square over here, it will snap to everything like it should. Then I'm going to go over to my stroke and color and I'm just going to flip these around. And the general consensus of a good logo is that it should fill up this space, but it should also be balanced. And with an A, I'm thinking if we were to create like this sort of double-decker A. So I'm going to create a grid there, a square there. I'm going to create another square here and just transform this up to there. So I've created this design here, which looks really cool. It works really nicely. And notice how everything looks so consistent already. It is just a couple of shapes, but these two shapes, we know that they're 2 grid lengths apart. And generally within logo design, it doesn't have to be 2 grid lengths apart. There's a lot of times where it won't be because we need to balance it optically, especially with type like we're working today. But it gives you a great ballpark or a good baseline to be on when designing a modern icon. So I'm going to go ahead and create our bowl of the A because I'm trying to create this double-decker A. If I just show you over here, see this A here kind of comes down like so, and we have something here. Now I'm trying to create a modern version of that. So I've got this there. Now to increase this up that way, I could just increase the whole thing and keep it like so. And we'll try that for a minute and see what happens whilst I put this part there. I mean, that kind of looks okay. In fact, what I'll do with that is I'm going to select it all and we'll just like duplicate it across because it's free to do so. We don't pay anything to just keep some work there. But I want to create some visual interest. So a way of doing that is I'm going to select this object here. I'm going to delete it actually. Create another square and notice how I'm keeping everything in line in the grid. I'm going to go to my direct selection tool now. Just take this one and I'm going to jump it up here to this grid line there. And I think that works pretty well. I'm going to go ahead and hide the guides and zoom out. Let's have a look at this. That looks kind of cool, but I think we can do some other things with it as well. I'll just duplicate that across as well. But what I want to do now is I'm going to actually just merge these two together. So let's do the Pathfinder merge, press OK. And I'm going to select these 2 points here and I'm going to bring my curves back in, all my guides back in. Selecting these 2 anchor points here, what happens if we were to just curve that around? That looks okay, but we have a bit of a problem. Notice how this curve here doesn't look right. It kind of gets fat here. We need to fix that. If we were to draw like a straight line here, let's do this in pink and a straight line here, you'll notice that we've got a bit of a fatness here. We can solve that quite easily by just undoing, selecting our anchor points again. And when we use this, we're going to select them individually. So we're going to round this one first. We're going to get our grids in there so we can actually grid it. So I want the anchor points to fit on this grid. And with this one, we kind of want the anchor points to fit on this one too, but halfway in between. I like the look of that. Once I've decided I like the look of an icon that looks pretty cool, I can then just highlight it, alt drag, group them together, and just hide it in the corner. The reason why I'm duplicating the icon all the time is because if I don't like the next edit I do, I've got this one here to fall back on, and there's no point in not. It kind of shows you the evolution of your design. What if I go ahead and curve some of these other things over here? So if I just created an actual curve there, what if I created a curve here for this? Now that looks bad, that looks not very good at all. What if I curved these three? That's an idea. Well, the reason why it looks smaller now is because it's a circle. So that means that we'll need to double the size of this. And a really easy way of doing that is by selecting this, going up to the top, and just pressing this asterisk symbol, so Shift and 8 times by 2, and it will times it by 2. Now that's a bit too large, so we're gonna have to kind of eyeball this. And that doesn't look good either. We can move that over to the right, we can move this up, but I'm trying to keep it nice and balanced all the way through. So I'm trying to keep it on these grid lines here. So that is the easy method. The second method of gridding is in proportions. We use grids as logo designers so that things remain consistent, harmonious, and in proportion. And that generally makes the logo scale well, view well, and feel whole and balanced. Here's another example of a logo, but this is one that I've drawn. So what do we do and how do we grid logos that we've drawn? Well, we can either do them in a 1x1 grid like you've seen last time, or we can do them by the golden ratio. If you don't know, the golden ratio is a very, very simple set of rules and proportions for shapes. Let me explain. Say we have this square here. If I wanted to find the golden rectangle, or if I wanted to create the golden ratio within this square, all I do is I'm going to basically just duplicate that square. So let's create them into outlines. And up here, I'm going to go and press times by 1.618. And what that'll do is it will times it by 1.618, which is the Fibonacci sequence, like so. And I can repeat this for eternity, but as we repeat it, you'll notice something happening. We start creating essentially the golden ratio throughout. And the way that we actually create this is by using like an arc tool after this, and we just arc it around. And this is how it's generally made. We just keep creating these arcs, holding shift to create these parts. And now we have like the golden ratio. Another way of using this is by using circles. Adding these circles into the bounds of these boxes creates golden circles. What makes them golden ratio? Well, it is simply the size difference between them. Now, if I was simply to create the logo over here with random squares and shapes and circles, it might not look as good. It might not look as harmonious. So what we do is we restrict our shape choice by the golden ratio. When we do that, we get something that looks like this, where each part of the logo is essentially a part of one of those circles that we've chosen. And that is how we get to this point here. Let me explain this. So I'm going to bring in my logo and we're going to lower the opacity down and lock that layer so we don't mess around with it. Now I need to find the proportions of the outside of it. Let me get rid of some of these numbers. We don't need these. Now I know this part here of the C is a pretty good fit. So I'm going to drag this part of the C out and we're going to create this part here. I know I want my underlining shape or the weight in the middle to be here. Okay, so we have our two shapes here. Now I want to map out where the star will be, and the shape up here, the distance between this part and this part is really important, and I think that works well with the D. So I'm going to move up and create this part here. Notice it doesn't fit perfectly. That's okay, because we're going to move this down to here as well, and this is where the base of our shape will be. This G, or this tiny circle, is probably going to fit quite nicely in there, and I'm not going to put it there. I'm actually going to put it on that line there. And in the middle here, I know if I just do this with the D, we can find our points, of where we want our circles to be. So I'm going to create some guides out of that. And we're going to just move these to the center of these points. We are only reusing shapes. We're not drawing anything with the pencil. We're just putting shapes in from this system, kind of like a jigsaw puzzle. Now I'm going to find the best circle without changing the size that will fit along these two here. And sometimes it's easy just to go to outline mode, pressing Command Y. I'm going to then flip this by pressing O and flipping them up and down on these axes. And we're going to actually flip them again from the center of this axis horizontally, copy them over, and that there looks great. However, I know that the A is going to fit pretty nicely down here for this curve. So we're going to choose that one. And then we're going to reflect this one over here. Now, if I select all of these and I go into the shape builder tool, I can get rid of the outside areas that I don't want. Now, in the end, once you've gone through all this and you use the shape builder tool to get rid of certain shapes and whatnot like so, and to add things in, you'll be left with this logo here with the corners, as well as the corners being the good value in the golden ratio. So that is another way of using grids, so that no matter how small it is or how large it is, we have really nice proportions that work naturally and give good harmony to the design. If you're new to design or you struggle with coming up with logo design concepts for modern logos, then hopefully this video has helped. Remember, go and check these things out. The Logitech MX Creative Keypad and the Logitech MX Creative Dial Pad, unbelievable tools to be using. It works inside, look, you see it's changing the opacity as I talk, which is pretty wild. It makes life a lot easier, so visit the link down below to go and learn more about these. You're not going to regret them. If you're a graphic designer, they're going to save you so much time. If you enjoyed the video, press subscribe, share this video with a friend if you didn't know something about it, and I will catch you in the next video. See you soon. Goodbye.